Hello kids, it's me again, back with another video. I've posted this on my Twitter, which you should be following me at, and also on the community tab here, but your girl found herself a new job. This time after about 5 months of inconsistent applying instead of 8 months of hardcore daily searching, which is honestly kind of wild when I think about it. But that's neither here nor there. I thought it would be worth it to talk a little about some lessons learned working my very first big girl job and offer some advice to those who may be in film school currently or are even thinking about taking the plunge to do so. However, if you're looking for more school-centric content, I have 2 such videos on this channel. One talking about whether or not film school is worth it for me, and one about my rather disastrous experience trying to make a short film in the middle of the Pond to Replay. So be sure to check those out. I'll link them in the description. So, huge major disclaimer. This is not going to be me dunking on my former employer or exposing them like I did with valnet. They haven't done anything to warrant that. While I am leaving them for a reason, in this instance, it's just not worth it because in the grand scheme of things, they aren't bad. So, if you came here expecting something like that, sorry to let you down, bestie, but I'm sure there are other work-related horror story videos for you to enjoy. But you can still watch this one. So, real It's Just Arin fans will remember that way back in the far-off land of July of 2021, I moved because I had finally found a job after a long, depressing 8 months of constantly looking. My job for the past year and 6 months has been as a videographer for a nonprofit. My job has been basically what it says on the tin. I make videos for my employer. I had some extra duties like managing social media as well as copy editing, which to be honest only ended up working out because I'm chronically online and therefore have a working knowledge of social media, and also because writing, proofreading, and editing is sort of my strong suit. After hearing that, you may ask, Arin, this is all stuff you like to do. Why on earth did you decide to leave? Well, friends, you know when a job description will have other duties as assigned in the job requirements section? Well, my former employer really stretched that because after a while, I ended up doing stuff that was very much not related to videography or video making at all. And by that, I mean they made me work the fields. This is not a lie. This is not hyperbole. December 21st, 2022. I found myself in a field of collard greens, my fingers going numb because my gloves were soaked after snipping leaves off their stems and putting them in a basket on my arm, and eventually I stood up, surveyed my bleary, cold, muddy surroundings, and just thought, and this will likely be the only time you hear me swear on youtube.com because it's just that serious, but I thought, what the fuck am I doing here? Don't get me wrong, agriculturalists are amazing and serve a very essential function to the society that we live in, but I make videos. I don't farm. And after having my entire body be sore for 5 days during the Christmas holiday, I decided that working the fields was not something that would be helping me further my career, and that 2023 was the year I leave this place behind. And lo and behold, I finally will, and I cannot be happier. To be honest, I had started earnestly applying for jobs in September, but this was really the last straw. Now, I know I just said I wasn't going to be dunking on my former employer, but when your company consists of just 6 people, I guess you're going to be doing some odd jobs. I'm really trying to move past it because I am leaving, and I have on good authority that I will never do anything of the sort at my new job, but still, it stings. Were it not for that and a few other instances of surprise farming, I probably would be staying, but alas. And that leads us to lesson number 1, have boundaries. This really applies to any job and not just one in the film or entertainment sector, but if you allow your employer to walk all over you, they will. Sometimes you gotta put your foot down at the risk of not being a team player. Honestly, this is one that I'll have to work on myself because despite my tremendous displeasure about it, I sorta kinda didn't say anything. To be honest, I didn't think it was worth it. I figured I'd have some time to look for new opportunities since it was the dead of winter and they wouldn't be planting again for at least a month and a half. I planned on grinning and bearing it until a better opportunity came along, and I guess it worked out, but do as I say, not as I do. One thing that also kind of plagued me during, honestly, the entire time I was working here was my lack of upward mobility. I'm not a ladder climber by any means. Having a fancy sounding position or being in charge of a lot of people kind of does nothing for me. But I knew that professionally speaking, in 5 years, I would be in exactly the same spot and exactly the same salary versus working somewhere with even a modicum of a chance of moving up in my career. And the thought of being stagnant here kind of made me want to vom, which leads us to lesson number 2. Have a general idea of where you want your career to go. Hopefully, if you're currently in film school, your professors or advisors would tell you that having a 5-year plan is helpful, and not just any 5-year plan, but one with actionable steps. For instance, my final semester of college, I had a course called Film Careers, and in that course, we were made to think realistically about our plans post-college. Mine seemed pretty simple at the time, but ended up being nearly impossible for reasons that I laid out in my Is Film School Worth It video. I was going to make my start in Atlanta doing post-production work for ad or marketing agencies, acquaint myself with the local indie filmmaking sphere, write a few shorts and shop them around to the indies in the area, and hopefully make it to a festival. Now, that may take more than 5 years, but considering Atlanta is the filmmaking hub of the South, I figured it couldn't be too hard. And after that, hopefully gain the attention of literary agents or managers, write a feature or two, and see what happens from there. Was it a good plan? I think so. Was it a realistic plan? I also think so. It's not like I had super high aspirations or anything. Again, I wanted to make this plan actionable. Unfortunately, I would never find out if that plan was actionable or not because I never found a job in Atlanta. Applied for tons of them, yes, but I don't think I got a single interview for any of them. I quickly learned that in order to find a job somewhere, you're gonna have to also live there. Now that I'm in Jackson and not Atlanta, will this work? Yes, it absolutely could. 2 of my classmates from college have set up a production company, so I could definitely make it work. But now that I have this new job, my 5-year plan has shifted, but only a little. In my new job, I work for a local news station. Which one? Mind your business. Anyway, what's interesting about local news is that, for one, most stations are owned by 3 or 4 companies, but aside from the dystopian aspects of that, the good thing is that these companies like to shift employees from one location to another. For example, if a position opened up in another city and I applied for it, if I had an adequate amount of experience, I have a good chance of getting it despite not living there, and my new employer will provide relocation assistance. And based on what I learned from my interview there, once I get some years under my belt, I can actually make the move to Atlanta or New York or really anywhere in the United States that has a news station owned by that company. And I can't tell you how reassuring that was to know that I actually have a tangible chance of moving to a bigger city. Don't get me wrong, Jackson is a fine place to live, but also it can be a very not fine place to live. And I will admit that I am fortunate enough to say that when the time comes, I can leave Jackson and all its problems behind me. My less fortunate neighbors cannot say that. That leads me to lesson number 3. Have a plan B. Be prepared for your plan A to not work out. I mean, if you're in film school, you're probably already used to rejection and disappointment, but get extra used to it because there will be a lot of it. Something else that was kind of important for me to realize while working at my former job was that I am, in fact, good enough to do the job that I was hired to do. Affirmations like that sound mega corny to me most of the time, but sometimes I really do have to say it to myself. Which leads us to lesson number 4. Know your skills and know your worth. Money isn't really a problem for me. I'm not rolling in dough or anything, but I'm also not frothing at the mouth chasing a bag. I'm also very aware that labor exploitation is rife in this industry if you're not part of a major union, and companies are always cutting corners by hiring Fiverr freelancers from countries where the US dollar can stretch a little farther instead of relying on local talent that costs a bit more. Over time, I began to realize that, hey, people in my position usually get paid more than $35,000 a year, especially considering all the extra stuff I was doing aside from videography work. And once I realized that a raise was nowhere in my future, I decided that once the 1-year mark hit, I was going to begin my slog through the swamps of Indeed, Glassdoor, and LinkedIn. When you, young film student watching this, are applying for jobs, become well acquainted with the average salary for the people in your field with your experience in your area. If a job isn't offering it, don't take it. You don't have to undervalue yourself just because you're new. I will admit, my new job is not offering me the salary that I asked for. I could have negotiated it higher, but I took a look at my situation. I was still getting paid more, I only had so much experience, and there would be ample opportunity for wage increases at this new company. So with all that in mind, I accepted it. I'm thankful that the younger Gen Zs are taking the F you pay me approach to working these days, because hopefully these audacious employers will realize that there isn't a worker shortage, there's a wage shortage. And if a job is only offering you exposure, definitely don't take it. People have died of exposure, you know. Aside from not being paid enough, oftentimes when I was working this job, I sort of got the vibe that my boss didn't fully believe that I knew how to do my job. And I don't know if it was because of something I did or because I'm young. I started this job a month before my 22nd birthday, or because I'm a woman or what, but sometimes I would find myself being lectured on doing things I already knew how to do and that I had done before at this job. And I have the sneaking suspicion that I wouldn't be treated this way if I was a man. I think now, after working this job, I have firmly grasped what it feels like to be infantilized. And I'd like to point out, I only got this treatment from my male supervisor, not my female one. She always seemed to believe that I knew what I was doing, so shout out to her for being a real one. I'm reminded of a particular instance of this where I was low-key shaded in front of everyone for God knows what reason, but a person who does graphic design work for the company, not video work by the way, yes, this is an important distinction, came into the office for some reason, and I believe this is the first time we met in person. My male boss introduces me as new when I had been working there for, if not a year, then almost a year, which I get it, time goes by fast, I guess, and asked this person, whose background was in graphic design, mind you, if they had any advice for me as someone just starting out, which, whatever, this is my first full-time job, I get it, but considering all the time I spent doing this in college and all the time spent doing this for YouTube, I really am not a beginner by any means. This is not my first rodeo partner. And do you know what his answer was? Go ahead, yes, pause this video and write it in the comments right now. I want to know what you guys think this man, who allegedly had 20 plus years of graphic design experience, said to me, the videographer who's been working professionally for at least a year at this point, and non-professionally for about 2.5 years. I'll wait. All done? Okay. He said, make sure you know those keyboard shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts. Like I was in intro to editing or something, and my boss nodded along like that was sage advice. And yeah, I got a little slick in the mouth and said, yeah, that was the first thing I learned in film school, which, okay, whatever, but still, I don't think he caught on anyway. I'd worked on no less than 10 long and short form videos at that time, a very conservative estimate, by the way. I set up, operated, and broke down multi-camera setups, lights, teleprompters, green screens, all by myself, countless times by then. I knew my keyboard shortcuts, guys. Being this young and cute looking is apparently working to my detriment here, but I absolutely refuse to allow that to happen in my new workplace. I am preemptively putting the kibosh on it, but something tells me that I won't even have to, because I got the vibe that at my new workplace, they will realize that I was hired for the proven skills that I possess. You know, like most people are. And yes, I do think it might be a gender thing. I wasn't born yesterday, despite what my former employer may think. I know meritocracy is a myth. I know if I had dangly bits between my legs and spoke with the exact same amount of authority I do now, which isn't even a whole lot, mind you, no one would give it a second thought. I wouldn't be asked to just let the more experienced people take a stab at it. I would be taken seriously. And although I love to complain, I'm not complaining here. Instead of yammering about how little my employers valued me, I made the steps to find an employer that would value me. Whether or not they do remains to be seen, but the vibes were right, so we'll see. To be honest, this one makes me hotter than the farming because it feels like an insult that is compounded upon by the fact that none of my supervisors have any background in film, media, communications, any of that. You hired me to do something, but you don't think I know how to do the thing you hired me to do, the thing you yourself don't know how to do, and the thing that I have been doing to a successful degree while I've been here. Respectfully, it's time to be real. Funnily enough, one of my coworkers who came from working in broadcast news and actually had lots of experience in that field saw me as competent. So what's good? It's happened lots of times since then, but I don't want to start punching holes in drywall, so I'll keep them to myself for now. Which leads us to lesson number 5. Stick up for yourself. This one is technically similar to number 4 and number 1, but you really have got to be your own advocate, especially if you are either the only woman or the only black person, or God forbid, the only black woman in your workplace. Thankfully, I was none of those at my previous job and will have a diverse workplace at my new job, thank the heavens. Only get slick in the mouth when the occasion really calls for it, and obviously don't be rude, but I will reiterate, if you allow someone to walk all over you, they will. That will conclude some of the lessons I've learned while working at my first big girl video job, and if you will have noticed, none of them were related to the art of film or video making at all. I mean, I guess I learned that chroma keying works way better in After Effects than Premiere, but I'm genuinely struggling to think of anything else. Which, surprise, leads me to my final lesson, number 6, I don't have enough fingers. Try to find environments where you can learn and grow in your craft. For a typical film school experience, this will likely mean PAing a bunch on local productions or summer internships, but given that Mississippi is something of a filmmaking desert, those opportunities were rare for me, so make sure you take all of them that you can. And go out of your comfort zone, too. Want to be a writer? Try camera operating a few times. Want to be a director? Try doing post on someone's projects. It's good to be well-rounded in this industry. Being able to be a one-woman production team definitely lended a hand to me getting this new job, and you might find out you like doing different things. I was really hoping that in my first job post-college that I would find a job somewhere where I could learn from the more senior employees at whatever ad or marketing agency in Atlanta I'd find myself at. I'd observe them to see how they work, the little life hacks and shortcuts they use, not keyboard shortcuts, but easier ways to do things, ask a million questions about everything, and commit them all to memory. Before he started being all favoritism-y and decided I was no longer one of his favorites, I did that with my film professor and was able to learn a lot. I didn't get that with my current job. Yeah, I knew what I was doing, as established before, but it's almost like having someone hold your hand out into the deep end of a pool and then letting go, versus being caught unawares and pushed into the deep end. Yeah, I know how to swim, but one of those experiences is more pleasant than the other. However, with the great team of folks I'll be working with at my new job, I have a feeling that I'm going to learn a whole lot, and I'm so looking forward to it. That's it for me for real this time, but I want to hear from other people working in the film or video making industry. What were some things you learned at your first job in this field, and how did they help you out as your career progressed? Tell me in the comments below. I read all of them, if you didn't know, and usually respond too. Follow me on Twitter, read my Medium articles, and listen to my podcast. I'll see you in the next one, and if you don't mind me, I'm going to continue counting down the days till I'm no longer at this job.